Wednesday webinar here at TimeSolv. It is our monthly webinar to allow our users to get the best out of and the most out of TimeSolv by sharing some tips and tricks on our software that you may not have known about before. My name is Scott Clayson. I'm the marketing director here at TimeSolv, and for those of you that have been on these webinars before, you are used to hearing my voice. So I want to welcome everyone who is joining us from around the country. For those of you that are out on the East Coast and the Mid-Atlantic area, hoping that the preparations are going well. Well, let's be honest. If you're anywhere in the Carolinas right now, you're not sitting here on a webinar on this Wednesday afternoon. You're going to be in doing more important things, preparing. So we will get started here. Another minute or so. I want to let some late stragglers jump into the webinar. Just a few little notes as usual as we get started. I will be recording the webinar so that we can send out information later. This should last about 45 to 60 minutes. And everyone is on mute, so you can't actually ask any questions, but we will do a Q&A as always near the end. You should see in the upper right corner of your screen a little chat icon, and if you click on that, you can type a message to me and ask questions. I always ask that as we're going through these various tips and tricks to refrain until I get to the Q&A section before asking your question, because oftentimes the question you might have could potentially be answered as I complete the instruction on the particular topic that we're talking about. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started and talk about kind of the items that we want to go through. Again, a recap: we'd send out a tip of the week every week to all of the firm owners and administrators at TimeSolv with just kind of things you may not have known about the software, new features that we've introduced, and so on. And this webinar is really just kind of to bring the past month's tip of the weeks, to life, if you will. So in this past month, we did actually 3 tip of the weeks that we sent out. So we're going to talk about a couple of things here. First of all, working with our Sent Invoices screen, using our dashboard, and automating trust payments. I know I've said this before for those that have sat in on the webinars before. Where we get these topics for the tip of the weeks is literally just me going to our support staff and asking, like, what are you hearing? What are questions that have been coming in more frequently than you think is normal that we need to do a tip of the week on? And so this is what's bubbled up to the surface this month. Believe it or not, I was actually on the call for this. We had a TimeSolv user who we're working on another issue with them. And they said the one thing they wish about TimeSolv is that there was a place to view all your sent invoices. And we quickly showed them how you actually can do all that with TimeSolv, and it's quite easy. And there's actually a lot of functionality within the Sent Invoices screen. So we'll review that today. The dashboard, I think, we've gone over this before, maybe about a year or so ago. I think it's one of the more underutilized features in TimeSolv to really allow your firm to check out the how you're doing against your goals. One of the real beliefs here at TimeSolv is we want to help your firm not just be more efficient, but more profitable. And we really adhere closely to goal setting as a way to reach the higher profits and the more and becoming more efficient. So the dashboard that we have allows you to set those goals, and then more importantly, track your progress against those goals. It's one thing to have a plan or a goal, but it's another thing to actually make sure that you're measuring them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So the dashboard in TimeSolv will show us how to do that. And then the last topic that we'll touch on, the automating of the trust payments. Again, I think this is a feature that not a lot of people know about. If you have to do any sort of a trust accounting and you want to make sure that the invoices that you sent out get paid from the trust account, there's ways you can do that where it's automated, so that you don't actually have to like record a payment and allocate the payment towards an invoice and so on. So we'll walk you through how to do those things. So let's first take a look at working with Sent Invoices and the various things that you can do within that screen, including searching for specific invoices, exporting out all of your invoices, downloading or resending them if you need to do that, how to void to draft. And as part of that, an important thing I'm going to show you, which I know we've done a whole tip on this before, a long time ago, I think, is making sure retaining the same invoice number when you resend an invoice that you have voided back to draft. And I'll show you what that means when we get there. And then how to record payments straight from the sent invoice screen. So let's take a look and dive right in. So obviously I've logged into my TimeSolv account here. And what we want to do first is take a look at our Sent Invoices screen and where it is. And that's why it was a bit of a shock with the one customer who wasn't aware that you could actually view that. But if you go under Invoices, you simply navigate here down to Sent Invoices. Seems simple enough, I know, but it obviously was hidden for some people. Right away, some of the things you can do with this screen, it's by default going to essentially show you the past two, in this case, it's 2.5 months. It's going back automatically to July 1st, all of your invoices that you have sent. On this screen, you can do several things with it. Obviously, you can change the date criteria of the sent invoices. You can sort by any one of these column titles. So if you want to sort by the client, you can. It automatically does it by invoice number. You can do it by date. Or the amount. And then you can also even sort based on who has a balance due. Okay, so there's lots of different ways you can sort these once you've arrived at the screen. If you want to find some very specific clients invoices, you could go under the search criteria here and just type the name of the client, and it's going to show you in this date range all of the invoices that you have sent to that particular client, in this case, Best Buy. You can also see, you can search by the specific responsible professional that you may have set for the matter and search for those invoices. You can change, obviously, the date range. That's easy enough. If you click on more options here, you can search if you've done a fixed fee invoice, and fixed fee invoice that is still to be, that has not been completed yet. Okay. So those are the easy enough search options when you're looking for the invoices themselves. The second thing is you can export all of these to Excel. And I look at this as, this is some ways, you can do under our reports, you can do an AR report, but this is a way as well to kind of do a really quick and dirty AR report. It's going to export everything that you see on the screen here, there's 26 records. So I'm going to export it out here. I'm going to open it up in Excel. My Excel's opening on another screen here. I'm going to enable it. And again, a little tip and trick if you aren't aware of some of the things you can do in Excel. If you click this little icon right here between, at the top of the screen here, it'll select all. And then if you go into any one of the columns where you get this little cursor and double click, it'll expand out the columns to the width of what's in that field. So just a quick FYI. This is a way now you can see on this page, like, okay, let's sort this now by balance due. And you can see it, from largest to smallest. So again, I'm going to select all. I'm going to go into data. I'm going to sort by my balance due, and I'm going to do largest to smallest. So now here's a quick way to see that my client, May client, has the largest balance due of all the sent invoices for this date range. And here's the invoice number. Here's when I sent the invoice. So again, this is kind of a quick and dirty AR report that you can do in Excel. You could even do it this way too. Just come over here and select amount and sort it, and just click on it until you sort to, it'll get the highest amount here. And then you can see, well, this is, these are the people that owe me the money who I should be calling my May client first to collect payment, and then going down to Longfellow Association and so on. Okay. So there's kind of a lot of flexibility here within the Sent Invoices page. If you want to actually download, for some people, if you send all your invoices via email, for example, but you want to have a copy for yourself, once you send the invoices, you can, click here, highlight all of the invoices, and you can download them. Click here and it'll generate, a PDF of all your invoices. If you need to, the other way you can do it is individually go to an invoice and click this little download button, and that'll just download it for you. And you can, again, choose the format here and download it. And you can see here it is, in whatever, it'll open up in PDF. Hello. My PDF opener is going a little slow. You can see it here, the sent invoice. If you need to resend the invoice for whatever reason, the client claims they never got it, they lost it, they deleted the email that had it, whatever the situation may be, you can come find the sent invoice, click on it, and come over here and hit resend. And it'll resend it in whichever, way you've designated that you're going to send your invoices, either straight to printer, it's going to be emailed to the contact, or both, if you have those checked. So resending invoices is an easy thing to do as well. Lastly, if you need to void a draft back to if you need to void a sent invoice back to draft, that's one of the, I think, stronger features that TimeSolv has. A lot of systems, believe it or not, make it very difficult to actually void a sent invoice back to draft to make edits. Now, keep in mind that if you have an invoice that's already been paid, it's been marked as paid, you've recorded a payment, you've allocated it towards that specific invoice, it's still possible to void that out. You would have to start, though, the first thing you'd have to do is unallocate the payment that was made. Then you could come in here and since it would show it as unpaid, then you could void it back to draft. So it's one more additional step, but it is possible. But if you need to void, let's say you need to, this Rogers Construction, $30.50 that was sent August 8th, it needs to be voided back to draft for whatever reason, hasn't been paid yet, there's still a balance on it, and make some edits because of something Rogers Construction mentioned. But here's the important part. You still want to, a lot of people will want to keep the same invoice number here. So what we want to do is, this is invoice number 224. So I'm going to open up just to make sure I remember that the invoice number here is 224, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to first, before I even void it back to draft, I'm going to go under invoices to settings. And I'm going to say the next invoice number I actually want it to be 224. Hit save. Let's go back to our sent invoices. Let's take 224, check it, void it back to draft. And whenever you void it back to draft, you're going to get this big warning about the implications of voiding it back to draft, and hit OK. And now 224, as you can see, is gone. And if we go back to our drafts, here is that invoice, Rogers Construction. Remember to edit any draft invoice, no matter whether it's been, no matter what, you just click on the dollar amount here. And let's say, Rogers Construction bellyached about the $30. It was just way too much. And you need to make an adjustment of, minus $10. And it was adjustment due to error, whatever it might be. Okay. We're going to hit save. We're going to go back. Let's preview it. And it's going to show, okay, here's our adjustment due to error of $10. Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. So we're ready to send it now. And we want to make sure it has the same invoice number, 224. So then we're going to hit send. Oh, I guess I didn't hit send there. There we go. And then we're going to go back to our sent invoices. There's 224 again. So it's the same invoice number as previous, which is important, I know, for a lot of people. But it has the altered amount. We took $10 off it and so on. Now we want to go back and just to be on the safe side. Now, because 225 and 226 are taken up already as invoice numbers, by default, the system would, the next one that it generates would be 227. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go back to my invoice and my settings, and I'm going to say 227. I said 225 there because it thought that would be the next one, but when it goes to generate a new invoice, it would see that 225 and 226 are already taken. So now the next invoice that I generate would be invoice number 227. Okay, so an important thing to recognize there. A lot of people do ask about, you know, if we void an invoice back to draft, but we want to keep the same invoice number, this is how you do it. Okay, just make sure you go under invoice and settings and tell the system what's going to be the next invoice number the next time we send an invoice. Okay, payments. The one thing too as well that was added not that long ago, maybe 6 months ago, is the ability to use this screen to actually record your payments as they come in, which is kind of convenient. You'll see next to any unpaid invoice, sent invoice, this little $ icon. You simply click on that and it's going to take you over to your payments page, but it's going to have everything pre-filled in already. It's going to have the client and matter filled in. It doesn't fill in the amount because we don't assume that the payment is going to be for the exact amount of that invoice. We know the reality of it is that perhaps your client's going to pay you in installments, whatever it might be. But this is another way to record payments. You can maybe even conveniently, if you know, like I just got a check from Best Buy, you do your Best Buy sent invoices, and you know you're going to apply that payment to this specific matter invoice of $36, and you can click the dollar icon here. So that's just another way to record a payment besides going under the payments and payment screen and so on. It takes you there directly. So again, a lot of things you can do with the sent invoices screen. A lot of flexibility here that maybe a lot of people don't realize. So. Okay, so that knocks out our first topic of talking about the sent invoices. So let's take a look at the next topic, and that's going to be talking about our dashboards. So again, I mentioned this at the top that I think that the dashboard feature within TimeSolv is a great way for you to be able, as an admin or firm owner, to track all the timekeepers at your firm to make sure that you've established goals for them and they're working towards those goals. And you can get a real snapshot to how are they doing against those goals. So to make that happen, let's go back into TimeSolv. And over here is the dashboard area of TimeSolv. You first want to make sure that the dashboards are enabled. So you'll want to go under account and your settings and scroll down to, we're still in this general tab. You want to scroll down and just have this enabled dashboard, check that box and hit save. And then over here under the dashboard, I'm going to show you kind of what you can see here. So on our dashboard, there's 3 things that you can be tracking. One is your billable hours goals. So I put in a billable hours goal for myself, this Scott Laidlaw account, of 1,600 hours for the year. And I believe that that is the generally accepted number of billable hours most law firms expect. Again, this is customizable, and I'll show you how to do that. But what you can see here then is you can track in each month as well, like here's how many billable hours I was targeting in January, 141, but I actually billed 5 hours. You know, let's look at May. May's a better month for me. So I actually only billed 131 billable hours. Now, actual total hours is the same because this number would be different. This kind of aqua colored bar would be different if you logged non-billable time as well. We always recommend that you book non-billable time as well, because you could see, okay, how many total hours did this person work versus how many billable hours did they work? And you would see that over here as well on the chart. I don't have any non-billable hours time entries for myself, so that's why there is no actual total hours. It's basically sitting behind this gold bar because I don't have any non-billable ones. But I can see I'm below my goal here for my billable hours, so I better get to work. So again, it's an easy snapshot to see how am I doing on my goal. The other two other tabs that you can take a look at, and again, I think this is a really important one, is what's our target billable amount? And what this basically is taking is your target billable hours goal and multiplying it by your default hourly rate to get like how much should I be billing out over the course of the year. In this case, at 1,600 hours, I think $250 an hour is my default rate. I should be billing out right around $400,000, which should be the billable amount by the end of the year. So again, I can see what was my actual billable amount, and what I think is great, more importantly, what's been collected against that. So you could have these three metrics: your goal number, what you've billed, and what you've collected. And again, that collected would be based on recording your payments here in TimeSolv and allocating them, to your invoices. You'd be able to see the collected amount against this particular person. The last tab that you can take a look at is your billable rate. My actual billable rate is $250. How many times am I changing my billable rate, making adjustments, that sort of thing? This has gone down because obviously I don't have any time entries right now. So those are the three things that you can target and take a look at. Now, as an admin person, you could see this for every one of your professionals within TimeSolv. Okay. Where you can change the goals is you go under dashboard here to the settings, and you can choose when does your fiscal year start. You can also put in just an overall target billable hours, and then you can get more granular here, and you could change the target hours. This is where you would put in the target billable rate for somebody. If you want to do this not necessarily on a yearly basis, but on a quarterly basis, you can do that for each person. You can just change this here, and you'd have to change this every quarter, but you could say like, okay, from July 1 to the end of September, so this is essentially Q3, and my target hours obviously would be 400. Let's save that and go back to my dashboard, and you can see it's only going to show me those months. So I can quickly look and see, maybe it's a little easier to digest if you do it quarterly. By default, it is going to be yearly, and you would have to manually change it for each timekeeper to the start date and end date of what you're tracking. And then you can change the year as well here. Okay. So again, I think it's a great way to really keep track of, are we hitting the goals that we've set for all of our timekeepers? And not just, billable hours, but what we've collected, what's the billable amount? Are we giving too many discounts on our billing rate and those sort of things? So it's really a great, I think, tool. One thing to note as well, that for the timekeepers themselves, if they're not an admin person, they won't necessarily see the amount or the billing rate unless you have given them the permissions to do that. And you would go under account to professionals. And if you give them the permission here that they can view and override rates, then they'll be able to see those two other tabs in their dashboard. Otherwise, they'll only be able to see their billable hours target. So just a small distinction there. Okay, so that is our second topic about how to use the dashboards. So let's keep ourselves moving here. Take a look at our last topic of the day, and that is automating trust payments. This is one thing that we, for those of you that are, if you're a firm that used to use time slips, this is something that we developed specifically when we started moving a lot of firms off of time slips and onto TimeSolv. It was a feature that time slips had and we didn't at the time. So we put this into place probably, I think we'd only converted maybe 2 or 3 firms at that point in time when they were requesting, look, in time slips, you could automatically pay an invoice from a trust account if you set it up like that. Can you do that in TimeSolv? So we made it happen. And if you don't have that set up right now, I'm going to walk you through how to do that. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you have your trust accounting enabled in TimeSolv. So let's go under Payments to Settings. And you just have to check this box that you are enabling trust account. You want to then set up. When you do so, you can add a new bank account and tell us whether it's a trust account or an operating account. In this case, I already have a trust account set up. I've named it IOLTA, as most of you probably do. And this is where you place the money that is not in your operating account at this point. So let's walk through how you would set this up and for a matter to make sure that when you send an invoice for that matter, it gets auto paid. So I'm going to go under Clients and Matters here. I'm going to create a brand new client. And I'm going to call it September Webinar Client. Okay, and now I want to create a new matter for it. So I'm going to go into the Matters tab. I'm going to add the matter. And I'm going to call it the September Webinar Matter. Once you're in any one of your matters, one of the tabs you'll see is the Trust Account tab. So you want to click on that. Okay, and you want to add your trust account to this matter. So you're going to say New Trust. It's your IOLTA account. This is where you would set that I want to auto pay invoices from trust. And by default, it's turned on. Please note as well, you can also set this where if the trust account falls below whatever dollar amount you designate, the invoice would reflect that by replenishing it up to whatever amount you want. So say you normally ask for a $5,000 retainer when you start a matter, and you always want to make sure it's replenished if it drops below $500. You would set that here, that if it falls below 500, replenish it back up to 5,000. And once it went below 500 on an invoice, it would automatically on that invoice create a payment to replenish it back up to 5,000 or whatever it is you designated. We're not going over that in detail today, but just know that it is possible. More importantly, here you want to auto pay invoice from trust. Hit save. You can add more than one trust account if you want, although I'm not sure that's fairly unusual, but it is possible if you have more than one trust account set up within TimeSolv. Again, I know it's a rarity, but it does happen. Down below here is where all of the kind of documentation of your retainer for this matter live. So let's go ahead and make a trust deposit against this particular matter. So we're going to go under Payments to Trust. And I'm going to start typing September Webinar Client, September Webinar Matter. It's a trust account we're going to, the one and only one that I have. It's a deposit. And they gave me $2,000 to start. And I'm going to hit save. Okay, and not worry about what's down below there. Let's go back to our client and matter. Let's go and find that matter again. I go to trust, and just to make sure we got it, you can see here's that deposit for $2,000. So now let's make some time entries, generate an invoice, and send it. So we're going to go under time entries here. We're going to go back to last week. And we're going to put in 2 hours. It was a conference call. Oops. Save and duplicate. Do another one here for the next day. I can't remember what abbreviations I have set up here. Let's just do DSC. Okay. DSC space, save. Okay, so now I have 5 hours worth of work here roughly for this particular matter. Let's generate an invoice for them. So we're going to go in invoices, drafts, new draft invoice. I'm going to specify that it's our September webinar client. And create the draft. There it is. It's $1,325. I'm going to take a quick peek at it, make sure it looks good. Try that again. You can see here's my 1325, and then on my remittance page, it's going to show that my invoice is 1325. I have a trust account of 2,000, and the balance of that trust account, once we get done, will be $675. Okay, so it's showing us everything that's going to be happening here. It's actually even showing the deposit that I made today of $2,000. That's how I ended up right now with a balance of 2,000. So we're all good. So let's go ahead and check the box and send it. Now, when I go over to there it is, it downloaded for me. I could then print it out and mail it. When I go over here to my Sent Invoices, and I get rid of my Best Buys, here's my September webinar client. And notice it's already marked as paid. I don't have to do anything to it. It was auto paid from the trust account. How do I know that? I'm going to click on the matter here. I'm going to go to my trust tab, and I'm going to see that I had a transfer to operating. I'm going to hover over it, and I can see that invoice number 227. Okay, that amount to $1,325. That's what was allocated. There's a zero balance due. So now we can go ahead and actually go and transfer the money from your trust account, $1,325, to your operating account. And you now have $675 left in the trust account for this particular client. So you didn't have to go through and record a payment. You didn't have to say, okay, whoops, I'm going to reports here. You didn't have to go under payments, and bring up the client in matter, and the payment method was trust transfer, all that sort of stuff. You don't have to do any of that. So it automatically paid the invoice from the trust account that you have. A really fast, efficient way when you're sending that invoice to show that it's marked as paid, so you don't forget to maybe go in. And this helps follow a lot of those trust accounting rules where, as soon as for some states, as soon as you send that invoice out, you need to be moving the money from the trust account to your operating account to make sure you're following all those rules. And this is the way that it automatically does that for you. Now, obviously, it doesn't physically it doesn't actually go into the bank account itself and transfer the money. You still have to do that. But the records that you keep here in TimeSolv will show you that, that should be transferred to operating. Okay. So that is all I have for the webinar today. It's only been about a half hour, but we moved through some things quickly. Any questions at this point in time about anything that you saw here in the last half hour or so? I'll let people think about that. Use that chat icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. The one thing I'll mention, as you see on my screen, if you do have any questions that you think of after we end this webinar, you can always send an email to support@timesolv.com. You can call us at 1-800-715-1284 and talk to one of our support team members. And I also encourage everyone, and I'm going to put this in the chat so you have a direct link to it. If you have an idea, whoops, what did I just do? That was disturbing. Here, I'll do it this way. There we go. If you have some feature ideas that you want to submit to us, go to this website here, I just put it in the chat for everybody, so you have a direct link to it. It's essentially just timesolv.ideas.aha.io. And this ideas portal is something our development team is monitoring and allows you can submit a new idea. You can browse through and see what ideas have already been submitted. And if you want that idea as well, you can upvote for it, and you can see which are the more popular ideas at this point in time. And you can vote on them. The more votes that we have, obviously that tells our dev team this is an important feature that we really need to be considering implementing in TimeSolv. So please use this ideas portal. We really want to hear back from everybody about, what is it that you'd like to see us do differently, better. This is the wish list sort of thing. And unless you verbally, or I shouldn't say verbally, unless you express to us something that you'd like to see, then we don't know, if we want to make sure we're doing everything right for you guys. This is also an important place where, and we've learned this, it goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning about the person who wished that we had a place to see sent invoices. If there is something that you don't think we have and you enter the idea here, it'd be great if you guys could do XYZ. Maybe we already do and you're just not aware of it. And this is, again, the whole reason I go back and we do these tips of the week and why we do these webinars is to try to make sure everyone knows all the various features that we have. But there's a lot of features within TimeSolv. So if there's something that you wish we had, you can always call support. You can email support. Submit your idea here. We'd love to hear from you. We love hearing from our customers. So I don't see anybody who's asked any questions. So I guess either you guys are a quiet group or I answered, that nobody had any questions about how to do these things within TimeSolv. So that's good, I suppose. And we can finish up here just a little bit early. So I will send a recording of this webinar to you all after it processes. Usually takes, an hour or so with this software that I'm using. And you will get that. So at your leisure, you could go back through any one of these tips if I went a little fast. But with that being said, if we have no more questions, then I'm going to end the webinar at this point. So everybody, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. And we will catch you next month. And before I go quickly, let's talk about it. Looking at the calendar, it will be October 10th, the second Wednesday. And you should see a place where you can register for those on the tip of the week emails I send out. It's also, if you go to our help.timesolv.com, there's places there where you can sign up for the webinar and to attend. But until then, have a great rest of the month. Have a great September. And we will talk to you all in October. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.